Welcome to the Ambiguous Show, a podcast for those who live in the in-between. I'm your host, Ashley Blake. Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's episode. How are you guys? I wish I could hear you. I wish I could hear your responses, but I hope you're doing well. I am doing well. I am really excited today because I don't know about anyone else. I know that I've seen some people's gardens that just were thriving. But my garden actually had a pretty tough time with all of these post last frost date frosts. The temperature fluctuations were crazy here. And so I've had a pretty tough time with all of my summer vegetables. A lot of them died early. It was a little sad, but things are finally taking root, but that seems real extra when you're actually talking about a garden. Anyways, so it's been a really exciting day today, just going through the garden and seeing everything that's growing. Basically up until now, I've just had lettuce and beet leaves, daikon leaves, the leaves of everything else that's planted. I just eat all the leaves, but I haven't had anything to mix into that. But it's getting to a pretty good spot here. Now I'm ready for the trellises to be full and for there to be tomatoes and peppers and zucchini and all the things. But I'm just happy that they're not dying at this point. Sorry. Anyways, anytime that I'm super exhausted from working or exhausted from life or physically just done, it's always just so good to be out in the garden and see all of the life, and then try to keep the insects from attacking everything. I did have a whole bed of cabbage that is no longer with us, but a whole community of insects were very well fed, so I'm glad I could help them with that. Anyways, in other news, what else has gone on this week? I don't know. I was out of town for the last couple days, and then I had a lot of work before that, so it's been kind of a whirlwind, per usual. There's been a lot going on in the world, I guess, per usual. I don't know if there's anyone else out there empaths that just feel everyone's feelings. Oh man, I want to give you guys a hug. Anyway, it just feels like every, news article that has more people dying, man, it really gets me. But I also have to say I'm really grateful for the positive people who are speaking such goodness into the world right now. Yeah, you know what? I used to be a little bit of a hater to people that would post all positivity quote Instagram posts. They would only just say random positive. I don't even know where, I don't know. Do you Google positive quotes of the day? I used to be a little bit of a hater, but right now I'm I'm grateful for every positive thing anyone ever says. Thank you, whoever you are. Thank you. Anyways, let's get to it. Yes, I had such great feedback from last week's episode with Nick Bo. I'm so grateful. Third culture kids, yes. So many people reached out to me and said that they had never heard that term before. And that was pretty cool. Something I'm still trying to wrap my head around, something that seems so normal and so just common speech to my whole life. Oftentimes people are what are you talking about? And you would think that by this time in life, I would get used to that. But it still feels so interesting to be introducing people to what is my, why am I breathing like this? Okay. You know, I wish I could say I could promise you guys that I would be normal at some point, like maybe by episode 10. But the thing is, I've never been normal. Anyways, I hope that you all are taking deep breaths, remembering to speak positively to yourself, speak good things to yourself, give yourself hugs. For anyone who's in a place where you can convene with people again, give other people hugs. Let's be kind to one another. What should we take a pause right here before I start talking about stuff? Yeah, maybe let's take a pause here. We'll be right back. This podcast was created with Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute the podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to get started in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I just got a notification from Duolingo because I haven't been practicing vocabulary. Yeah, I should do that. I was going to say I need to reach out to some friends and practice speaking in different languages, just because I haven't spoken to anyone in so long outside of work that I barely can speak English. Yeah, so if you want to be, if you want to language up, you want to text in Russian or Korean and fix my grammatical errors.
I don't know. Anywho.
I've been thinking a lot about cultural formation lately. And I've been writing a lot of questions that I have. At the beginning of the pandemic, or even maybe before that, I had a lot of speaking opportunities, a lot of artist opportunities to speak about the Black perspective. I have a collection of poetry specifically about the Black perspective in America. And it got really exhausting at one point to feel like I needed to carry the weight of cultural representation everywhere I went, which obviously any minority has to do basically any time. Like everyone thinks that you are the speaker of your race, which is a whole nother thing. But it did get to a point where I do think that I may have avoided conversations or avoided environments or conferences that I knew that my only input that would be wanted, or the reason that they were asking me there was to deal with one segment of our cultural experience. And I do honestly, my personality type does not like conflict or tension. Like, honestly, if you ask me what kind of show is my favorite show or movie, like, I'm going to pick the one where the 50 episode Chinese drama where there's 3 plot conflicts and they resolve within 15 minutes. You don't have to wait till the next episode to figure out what happened. I'm just really into low stress, low dramatic. I know it's kind of ridiculous as a dramatic actor. I love performing dramatically. And maybe I wasn't always this way. I think just over the last few years, life is so dramatic. I don't need it in every spectrum. Anyways, so I think I did get to a point where I just didn't want to talk about racial tension or anything of the sort. because my heart was tired, my mind was tired. And also, there's just like this thing when you know that people only want you for one thing, and you know that there's actually so much more to offer. But so I took a while of being silent. I think I spent maybe just a little bit longer than I should have, just being silent. Although I do say that there's something beneficial in that. I think there's always goodness and introspection and silence and just listening. But it led me to a place where I've just been asking a lot of questions. And I don't necessarily have all of the answers, but I know that I've become incredibly passionate about finding them. And maybe not finding the end all be all, but the pursuit of understanding glimpses at a time, right? The ever evolving understanding. I said all that, but I might have said nothing at all. I saw someone online this week post a caption that said, "I am American with fill in the blank heritage." And that surprisingly was so interesting to me. I am an American with a specific heritage. Man, I have only ever seen our heritage placed before the hyphen. I have only ever seen African American, Black American, Jamaican American, Asian American, Mexican American, whatever, fill in the blank American. Our heritage comes before the hyphen. And this prompted this idea that I've been thinking about a lot lately. This need that I think that we are approaching and that I've been considering in so many layers lately. And this caption prompted a deeper question because I wonder if people have never seen the minorities in America as American
or as equal.
Because the narrative we have given, that has been given to us, is our heritage before our nationality.
So then what is it to be American?
And not to say that I'm not proud of all of the pieces of myself, but for generations, and each person in each culture is different, but for generations that are so distant from their heritage culture, we have to address the position we exist in currently, collectively, where we have this in-between. I mean, I remember when I was younger, when there was this big movement to go back to Africa. I mean, there's been more than one, but I remember when my awakening to the politics of race. I was in an Africana Studies program in college, and I did a lot of research on the African American struggle. I did a lot of research, beautiful research on African American literature that coincided with a lot of the historical things. But really, the Black movements in the U.S. became really part of the core of what I was interested in. But then there was this, there are all these writings about this conflict that you reach when if you try to reject the American because of the rejection that you face, well, then let's go back to Africa, who is also not willing to accept you. You're too different from both places, too different from both cultures. But the thing is that we've progressed for a certain amount of time now where it's not just one person who lives in that realm. We have to break the constructs that we've been given about the either or and accept ourselves fully in this beautiful third space that we occupy. How do we resist these structures that weren't made by us and they weren't made for us? I mean, I wonder how many people aren't sure what box to check off on the census. I remember, have I told this story? I used to be really, in school, upset about the lack of choice on end of grade testing of what are you. I think it might be a little bit harder for me than most people because I have experienced a pretty strong resistance to the idea of being American for a long time. And I'm getting to the point where I'm wondering if it's because of my experience in America or because of the options for what being American look like frustrate me. And it may be both and it may be more. Honestly, I don't necessarily have the answer for that today. But I do think that it is pretty apparent to me that our vocabulary and our understanding and our positioning within society has to be reimagined. The thought, I don't think I ever actually said it. The thought of that I've been contemplating lately is the reimagining of the American identity. I wonder if there would be so much tension. I mean, obviously there's still tension because it's the world we live in. But what if the narrative was that we were American and we have different heritages? How much of the hyphens are necessary? I am all for us owning our heritage and owning our culture, but I wonder when it comes down to who we are, what legacy we're leaving, what narrative we're building. I wonder if this is our narrative or if this is one that's been given to us and we haven't known to change it. I feel like we're at this really interesting point in history. I guess any point could be interesting to someone, but I would like to think of it as a cultural renaissance. So what do we do about it? What do we do when we're acknowledging that we're at a place where we probably need to do some vocabulary updates, where we probably need to do some mindset updates about ourselves, about our collective? I wonder, I think one of the things that we have to do is to look to the artist. Creativity allows us to see new facets of humanity. Minorities have had fragmented versions of representation in media. Fragmented at best. And that makes me ask, who is it that is building our cultural narrative? And if the answer does not become us, if we don't rise up, if we don't take that space of building our own cultural narrative, I just feel like so much is at stake. We have the opportunity to change our cultural mindset, but we have to be intentional. We need to rally for the need to create and to witness multifaceted cultural representation. We must rehumanize ourselves, take ourselves out of the strange shaped boxes that we tried to squish ourselves into. It is essential that we are aware of the influence that media has on our thoughts and our behaviors. So what do we do? Because honestly, this last little block of time here, we have a lot of people raising conflict. We have a lot of people bringing up problems. And I would just urge us all to be people who make more solutions. What do we do? If you're an artist, Keep arting. Yes, I know that's not a word, but don't stop. We need your voice and we need your experiences. We need them maybe now more than ever. And no matter how many times someone has said something, and no matter how many times you've seen an image and you think that you're doing the same thing as everyone else, your experiences and your style and your voice and your craft, whatever it may be, is different. It's your own, and it's valuable for you to say and to do. Even if you do just one thing differently, it may be the one thing that communicates that idea to someone else. It may be the one thing that moves someone that couldn't be moved before. If you're a human of any kind, did you know that conversation is activism? Sitting around the table with friends who may not agree with you. Not the friends who co-sign everything that you say, not the ones that laugh at all your jokes even when they're not funny, the friends who may not understand your point of view, the friends that definitely don't. And yes, you can have friends that don't understand your experiences, but guess what? They probably don't understand them because you haven't had enough hard conversations where you're asking deep questions, where you're answering deep questions, where you're having conversations that are honest and true. Stories, just like conversations, prompt us to the evolution of ideas and understanding. Stories and conversations are what change us to where we can't stay the same. When someone tells a story, when someone shows us a photo of something that's happening in the world that you didn't know of before, that prompts you to not stay the same. I remember, honestly, when I was younger, I didn't understand a lot of the familial conflict that I was experiencing. And I was led to believe that it was just because I had a terrible attitude or was like a terrible human or whatever. But it wasn't until I hung around other first generation, second generation kids who were telling stories of their childhood and telling stories of their parents and telling stories of their grandparents to where I understood, to where I came to the realization that, hey, it's a cultural thing. I didn't understand the cultural differences. I didn't understand the cultural values. There's so much power in the telling of your story. Because I spent the majority of my life not understanding my own family. And that was unlocked in the telling of someone else's story on a podcast. Not even in real life, not even at a table. We are all essential to collective understanding. We're all necessary. And it's really easy to look at like one group of people and say, you know what? Those are the people that got to bring the change. Let's throw it to policy. We got to have some policymakers to bring about change. We got to have the people doing rallies. We got to have the people doing this. We're all necessary. All of us. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. I'm going to read some of the questions that I've been pondering lately. These are things I'm pondering and things that I'm working through in my work, in my art, in my writing. But I wanted to share them with you. What do you imagine as the new cultural experience for the new American identity? What version of American would you be proud to be? Why is change important? Are we fighting for a white standard that we don't even want, or creating our own standard of excellence? What even is freedom? What is success and equality for the masses? Those are just some of the things that are on this list of questions. And I have been having a lot of thoughts on this lately. And these are the types of questions that I'll be asking friends at tables who may or may not agree with me. And maybe we can bring some of these questions here on the podcast with people who are smarter than me. And I hope, if nothing else, this episode prompts you to think of your own questions and to think through your own experience with culture. I said earlier that culture is just something that I've been exploring lately. And open-endedly, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but this is the Ambiguous Show, so there you go. But I did want to mention that we are launching our first anthology with Moida. The theme is culture. Submissions just opened this week. Submissions can be essays, short stories, poetry, visual narrative, photography, comics, etc. All the submission guidelines are at moida.co/submissions. Yeah, and it's about culture, particularly those cultures whose voices have been underrepresented. So, if you are an artist of sorts, if you have a story to tell, poetry, anything, visual, if you have visual art that can be photographed or, all the things, guys. We are really excited about this project. We're accepting multilingual submissions, so we're really excited to be bringing people and stories together and trying to pursue this idea of creating our own cultural narrative. So I'm really excited about it. Okay, so that is moida.co/submissions if you would like to submit, or if you know a friend who is a really great writer or artist, please send it their way. We are accepting submissions until June 21st. We cannot wait to share it with you all. And now we have a segment called
Things No One Pays Us to Love.
I'm really excited to share this with you guys this week. A film that I have been watching and supporting through Seed and Spark, which, if you don't know, Seed and Spark is basically a way for filmmakers to raise support for their films. And there is a film, Witness to a Devouring Monster. And actually, it's actually a series of shorts, if I am correct. And it's inspired by the writings of French-Cuban writer Agnès Nin. And basically, it recounts 3 women as their worlds shift from realistic to surreal. They speak of assault, colonization, fetishization, and insatiable introspection. And basically, so the film statement is, film often overlooks and misrepresents the Filipinx diaspora. I aim to demonstrate its richness despite how the industry often characterizes it. This film is part of a larger movement of creators who actively carve out space for their communities, normalizing 3D characters for brown people in media. And I really just wanted to share this with you all this week. This is the last week of their fundraiser on Seed and Spark. And so anyone listening, I just want you guys to check out what they're doing. The visuals are just incredible. The story is fantastic. If you watch the trailer for their fundraising, I just really recommend it to you all. So you can find them on Instagram at WTADM_film. That's Witness to a Devouring Monster. You can also probably just look up Witness to a Devouring Monster, or go straight to Seed and Spark and look up the title and you can find it. They're also on Facebook, but go follow them. It's just really beautiful storytelling. So that is what we are promoting this week. Guys, I love our time together. But I would love it even more if you sent me a voice message on Anchor. I would love to hear your stories, your shout outs, your feedback, or just say hi. I want to hear your voices. I mean, you can also just, comment and be friends on Instagram. But I really love hearing the voice messages on Anchor. It's just such a cool feature. But anyways, you can send your question, story, shout out to hello@moida.co if you don't want to leave a voice message. But if you have a question or a shout out, you can leave a voice message and we can play it on the show. Or you can just leave one and we don't have to play it if you feel very uncomfortable about that. But still, let's be friends, okay? You can support the podcast on our Anchor page. You can give as little as $1 a month at anchor.fm/The Ambiguous Show. You can also help by subscribing to the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review and connecting with us on Instagram at The Ambiguous Show. We want to do as much as we can to support our communities. We want to connect with you guys. So reach out. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make it a better way. Okay, anyways, this podcast is brought to you by Moida, where creativity gathers and worlds collide. Again, I want to let you know if you have any thoughts on culture and yours specifically. Well, whatever. Up to interpretation. Don't forget to submit for the Moida anthology. Again, moida.co/submissions. All right, guys. Music is brought to you by Lay. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are exactly who you need to be. Be well, friends.